Well, hi everyone, welcome to our blog today as we journey into our third week of Lent together. And the title Walter Brueggemann's chosen for today's blog is quite dramatic. It's called The Snares of Death and the Drama of Good News. The Snares of Death and the Drama of Good News. That's quite a title. And as a passage of scripture he's chosen is one simple verse, which comes from Luke chapter 24. It says, Then they told what had happened on the road, and how he had been made known to them in the breaking of the bread. Then they were told what had happened on the road, and how he had been made known to them in the breaking of the bread. This comes from a passage of scripture called the Road to Emmaus, which is a story of what happened to Jesus after the resurrection. And I love the way Walter Brueggemann takes a story that we would normally have after Easter Day, in the weeks after Easter, and then takes it and places it in the context here of Lent. I'd never seen that in that way before. So often we can sort of compartmentalise these beautiful stories, and so we sort of say, well, that's for then and this is for now, and etc., like a chronology. But sometimes, as Walter Brueggemann is showing us, is that they all have aspects of the other, and no more so than this story of Emmaus, because he then draws out a couple of key points which is good for us to reflect on at this point in our journey. And this is something of how it goes. The story of the road to Emmaus may be one you know, or you may have never heard of it before, but you need to picture yourself after Easter, all the events that had taken place with Jesus eventually dying on the cross. And then there's this crazy account from some of the women particularly, but then some of the disciples, that Jesus had actually risen on Easter Day. And Cleopas and a friend, we don't know the friend's name, are walking away from Jerusalem after all these events. And they're pondering many things on their way to a village called Emmaus, which is about 7 miles away. And in amongst their conversation, a stranger joins them on the highway. That wasn't uncommon in those days, because you often walked together to protect yourself against bandits and the like. And the stranger asks them what they're talking about. Might be like we meeting somebody at a bus stop or at a railway station and saying, you know, how's it going and what's going on for you? And they say, don't you know what's happened in Jerusalem during these days? And they recount what had happened to Jesus of Nazareth during that time, and how they hoped that he'd been the one that would actually bring hope and glory and salvation to Israel, a new beginning. But of course then he died on the cross, and there was this strange account of the women finding the tomb empty. And then Jesus challenges those two disciples, Cleopas and his friend, and indeed challenges each of us with these words, which he takes from Luke 24. How foolish you are, how slow to believe all that the prophets had spoken. Did you not know that the Messiah had to suffer these things before he then entered his glory? And then, beginning with Moses and the prophets, he went through all the scriptures and explained what they were saying concerning himself. The story, for those of you who know, goes on to say that Jesus arrives with these two disciples at Emmaus, and he appears to go on, and they invite him back to dinner, and they ask him to share the prayer of blessing over the bread, which was common that you would do in a household as well as in a church. And when he shares this prayer of blessing, then they recognise him in the breaking of the bread as being none other than the risen Jesus himself. So what's the point that Walter Brueggemann's trying to make to us? Well, it sort of hinges on the fact that, did we not know that this was what needed to happen? You see, what can happen in this life of faith of ours is that we know all the stories, we know them even maybe in roughly the right order and sing the right notes. But strangely, do we really take it to heart? Do we get captured by this story and trust it to the very depth of our being? not just in terms of a belief, but in a way of living, as a way of seeing. We sort of let go of ourselves into the joy of the gospel. And really that's the challenge that those two disciples met. They had experienced some of the most amazing events that have ever taken place in history. And they knew it all in their heads, but they were still holding back in some way. They were discussing it, but they didn't quite trust it. Often the church has been very accepting of the fact that as long as people turned up on a Sunday or whatever, then that was enough. But especially as we emerge from this pandemic and we look to the future with all that's going on in the world, with all these terrible things happening around us, as well as some good things as well, the need for trusting in God at this time is probably needed now, not almost more than ever before, but certainly needed now. And that's beyond belief. It's about trusting in this story, finding ourselves in this story, and as I say, letting go of who we are. And that does happen for some people. It means that we can see the world with its possibilities, even at the moment. Not naively, but we see those moments, some beautiful acts of grace when they come along. We can't make them happen, but they're wonderful when they do. And we need to notice them along this journey. A bit like Jesus breaking the bread. Wouldn't it be ironic that we went through everything that we go through in life and we followed Jesus so faithfully, and yet we'd missed him. We've missed him in those moments. And so Walter Brueggemann is sort of reminding us that Lent is at its very heart about the road to Emmaus. And I'll be thankful to him for that. As I say, I've never seen it in that way before. And it reminds me that not only is life a pilgrimage, it's a very well-known metaphor, but it is looking for those moments of grace. Don't miss Jesus after wanting to follow him as you have done. Look for those times when he does break into your life and indeed wants you to let go of who you are so that you can truly embrace who you can become. That may be true for you watching this video today. It may be true for me as I look to the next chapter of what we're going to do together and what I'm going to do personally. It may be what we're all looking towards together. Do we just resign ourselves to the story is as it always has been, that Jesus never really quite made it? Or do we take the leap of faith that he will be risen and ascended and glorified? I encourage you in your journey of Lent and in your journey into Easter. And may you have the most amazing and wonderful time, whatever your circumstances are at the moment. Let us be an Emmaus people together. God bless. Bye for now.